Perfect. So why are we even here today? You came to join our webinar where I'll try to showcase you and I will show you why the workforce and skills planning is a little bit too complex in Excel. And obviously, I'm talking to skills management professionals, so you know the deal, you know the drill. Um, Managing skills in Excel is just difficult, right? Of course, if you maybe have a team of 10 people, then it might be something that can be easily done. But the more you scale up, the more skills and the more certificates you want to showcase in there and you want to capture the more data, the more complicated it gets. And today we're going to talk about it and see how this will change. Um, Before we start, a little bit to me. My name is Stefan. I work here as AG5 as an onboarding specialist, which means I help new customers and new clients to get set up for success in AG5. So we're going to talk about their data. I'm going to migrate their data. I'll train the people in AG5 just to make sure that they know how the system works, of course. And to me personally, you might hear it from my accent. I'm from Germany originally. Also, my name is super German, so there's no hiding that. I sit in the Netherlands, so I don't live in Germany anymore. And I'm really excited to have that webinar with you all together. The webinar itself is roughly 40 minutes long. We do have a 10 minutes Q&A session afterwards planned in. And I think you can also see that there's a poll coming up right now because it's always interesting for me to see where you're currently managing and how you're currently managing your skills. So are you using Excel? Are you coming from Excel? Maybe you already have something like AG5 that you're using. Do you have an active HR system or an LMS in place that you're using? Yeah, just vote in the poll to give us an idea what you're currently using. As mentioned a little bit earlier before I started, the recording of the webinar and the slides will be sent out to you afterwards, so you can always rewatch what you saw today. Okay, and we have actually a lot of people voting for Excel. So I guess this is the perfect webinar for you because we're going to compare Excel to AG5 in here. Yeah, so by the end of the webinar, what will you learn and what will you know? We want to talk about the common challenges you're facing in Excel and how they are solved within AG5, how you can, for example, track skills, how you can track the training progress of an employee, how do you put a planning into place in Excel compared to AG5. Also, how can you simplify this whole process? How can you easily move from one employee, from one shift or from one department or from one job role to another in AG5? How can this make your life a little bit easier for the skills management? And then, of course, point number 3 is really, really important. You want to get insights, easily accessible insights of your current workforce. What is the status quo? How is my workforce faring? Are they trained? Are we compliant? Does somebody need to be retrained quickly because there's an audit coming, right? So this is something we want to have a look together to make sure that your workforce is always 100% compliant, ideally, right? Because that's what we want to achieve. AG5's main mission, as you can see here, we help to visualize and to close skill gaps for all kinds of companies. We are specializing in companies with regulated requirements. So you can see here at the bottom a few of the companies you're working with. So we want to make sure that your workforce, that they are all 100% trained and that they're capable of doing their job, not only because it's a security issue for themselves. We want to make sure that everybody is safe, but of course also that if an audit is coming up, that you're passing it and that you don't get into any troubles. So, if you think about what the manager needs to do and when they need to work in a spreadsheet, then we can see here a few situations that can come up. For example, if you have a new employee that would start, or if you have an employee that leaves. So you need to make sure that you can easily update the requirements of an employee. Ideally, you want to have the possibility to easily also add an employee that the requirements are, for example, pulled automatically. That you don't have to go through multiple tabs in a spreadsheet and get different formulas that you need to keep track of, right? So we want to make it as easy as possible. But then it could also happen there's a new regulatory rules come into place. then all of a sudden you need to go through all the different spreadsheets and say, hey, is this current training up to date? Do we need to change some skill requirements based on new rules and laws? Do we create something completely new from scratch? Right, so this is something you need to be aware of. And then, of course, if you have to go through 15 or 20 different Excel sheets, it's just super cumbersome and difficult to keep track of. If you have a new skill version, let's say one of your trainings gets an update, how can you easily capture this in your Excel sheet? If an employee needs to be retrained, a lot of certificates, of course, are running out after 2 years or after a year. How can you easily keep track that that specific employee needs to be retrained to what specific date? Ideally, how can you notify that employee easily without going through the list, going through all the tabs, sending out emails manually? So how can you make this easy? And this leads us actually directly to the challenges that you're facing within Excel, because what I mentioned beforehand, of course, is super difficult to achieve in Excel. Especially if your company is growing and if you have a lot of employees to keep track of. Yeah, then this is the main issues that you can see. So you have too many employees you don't need to keep track of. And then you know it yourself, right? Then maybe one head of the department or one team says, hey, can you quickly share your Excel file with me because I need to check my own team. So you send out one file to that person, and then he says, well, if I have the file anyway, I might as well keep track myself. So and all of a sudden you have two different versions of files floating around, or even more, of course, and nobody can make sure which one is that one source of truth where you can easily pull all the data from that you would need. And then, of course, the last one is a little bit a cheeky one. Nobody likes to update Excel skills in Excel, right? Yeah, because it's just a lot. Right? If you have to click through all those different tabs, you have to keep track of all those different files. It's just, I don't want to say annoying, but it's time consuming, and yeah, it's a lot. So, and what are the consequences of that? If you still have to go through all those different Excel files, all those different folders in the system, right? It's affecting your efficiency. It's affecting your compliance and might have even legal risks, right? Because the more a human needs to touch data, the more, of course, there's a chance for also human errors. No, nobody wants to admit it, but we all every once in a while make an error. There are things maybe you forget, or maybe, as mentioned, you send it out to different people, you have multiple files to keep track of. Then, of course, you're going to have the problem with an audit or report coming up. Then this can also hinder your growth, right? So because if you cannot quickly and easily see where are my skill gaps, where do I need to grow, where do I need more people to be capable of doing a specific task, to operate a specific machine, or whatnot, then this can hinder your growth. It's going to be difficult for you to maybe meet specific production requirements because your team is not equipped. And then the last one, certainly not the least one, because that is something that is also super important that we can see time and time again. The employee morale and the employee engagement is just so much bigger when they are feeling taken care of. That I know, hey, I do get the training that I need to be good at my job. Maybe even that's something we have in AG5. Maybe I, as an employer, can give agency to the employee that say, hey, this is the skills you need to be trained on. This is your current job profile. And those are job profiles you can develop or grow yourself into, right? So we can give employees the chance to also participate in the whole skills management a little bit by themselves. Of course, we can limited access, right, for them that they don't go wild in their own certificates, but they can see where I'm at, where can I go, where I can grow to, and this is just super, super important, especially in the current market situation, where, and you know it, it's just so much more efficient and better for a company to keep the employees and train them than to just rehiring new employees and retrain everybody, right? So this is something that is really, really important, actually. So yeah, and what is the root of the problem? To boil it all down, the root of the problem is spreadsheets in Excel or similar spreadsheets that were made for general tasks, and nowadays it's just so more detailed, the skills management. There's so many requirements that you need to keep track of, so many different situations, and that is just difficult in Excel. And a software like AG5 can make your life so much easier. And that's what we're going to talk about. So the following questions we need to ask ourselves, and of course, right? So how can we understand, or how can you as a manager, as a skills manager, skills specialist, how can you understand the skill gaps in your company? Where do we need to be plan trainings into the system? How can you avoid that there's knowledge missing, that people don't know how to securely operate a specific machine maybe? Do employees need to be retrained? Do they need to be re-invited and recertified? So how can we all do this? And of course, how can we quickly find an expert in our workforce? For example, if somebody is on a longer leave, maybe they have parental leave, or maybe somebody is retiring and you want to plan a succession, then how is it for you to easily find somebody in your workforce who could do that specific job or that could grow into that job, right? And those are all things that you simply cannot do easily in an Excel sheet. So this is a little bit now what you can see here of the agenda we're going to talk about today. Of course, we also want to compare it a little bit to Excel. We want to see how can you manage employees, how can we add, or what would you do to add an employee, for example, to an Excel sheet? What would be the steps there? How can you do it in AG5? How can you manage specific skills? How can you put trainings into place? How can you create a skills matrix in Excel? And how would you create a skill matrix in AG5? And then how can we add a result? How can we add documents and certifications? And where do you find them, right? Because you know how it is if you have everything on your computer on a shared folder system, you have to click to a bazillion different folders to get the data that you need. And then the last part, we want to have a look at the compliance. We want to get insights. The C-suite certainly doesn't want to go through 5 or 10 different Excel sheets to see, hey, how is our company actually doing? How is that specific department doing? They want to have like an easy understandable graph, maybe even write some sort of dashboard to say, hey, how is the compliance rate? What skills are really, really good? Which employee is really great? Right, so those are things they want to see easily on one glance without having to click through different tabs of an Excel sheet. And with this being said, let's jump into our live demo. So this is the AG5 system when you open it up for the first time. You can see here on one glance already the different matrices that you have. Today we want to focus on our production team level, production team 3, and we want to also create a new matrix for them. So, but before we see how it works in AG5, let's have a quick look here how it is in Excel, right? So here we have our production team. In this case, actually probably should be production team 3. We can see here on the top part, of course, all our skills. We can see here the certifications that employees need to be trained in, that they need to have. I can see here on the left side all our different employees. I can even see their job roles if this is something you want to show in your matrix, right? I can see here in the center of our matrix the results, what is achieved so far. For example, I can see that Linus needs to be trained here in a specific skill. He does not have that result yet. And if I scroll a little bit more down, I can also see how many of those people are actually required to be proficient in that specific skill, or they need to be trained in that certificate. I can see we need to have 15 and we have 16 achieved, right? So this is all based on specific formulas. And if you would want to create now a matrix for a new team, for example, how would you normally do this in Excel? Right, and you're the skills management experts, you probably did it already multiple times yourself. You would probably go here on the right click, you would say, okay, let's copy it, because we're deep down, we're all a little bit work smart, don't work hard, right? So instead of creating a matrix from scratch, you want to copy the matrix and fill it out with the data that you need. So now here we have the copy of our matrix. Let's move it here and call it then for production team 4, because that's what you will be recreating in AG5 then. But of course, this is not filled with data from production team 3. So what would you need to do? First of all, we're not 100% sure yet, even if the production team 4 has the exact same requirements than team number 3. Then that means I would need to delete all those skills here. I would need to delete the skill codes, maybe if you're working with skill codes. I would also need to delete, of course, the links for that specific trainings, if there's something, because the link maybe doesn't even align with the training that will be in here. Then we would need to delete all those different employees, because they are part of team number 3 and not team number 4. Job roles might align, right? So we're not gonna touch them for now, but we deleted the people. Then of course we need to delete all the results, because again, it's for a different team, and then we're not 100% sure if all those requirements are still exactly the same. So, and this means you have more or less an empty template that you will need to fill with all your data, and then you need to maybe use an export from your HR tool where you can put in the employee names. But then, of course, and this is also something that I see a lot in the wild, right? So I can see a lot with real customers I'm working with. My name is Stefan Schneider. So I would put in now, of course, from an HR export, Stefan Schneider. But maybe I wouldn't even go by the name Stefan. Maybe I shorten it to Steff. So then maybe the manager would put in here Steff instead of Stefan Schneider. Maybe there's a different name. I know, especially also in the English-speaking ones, right? Somebody is called, their name is Charles. It's shortened to Chuck. William to Bill, right? So their names and shortenings of names that might on a first glance then not be 100% clear to which employee they actually belong to. So this is already your first problem that you might run into, that the names that you can see in the matrix are not 100% aligning with what actually the HR tool is giving. And if I, as an auditor, would come into your company then and say, hey, show me that specific employee, maybe I ask by the first and by the second time which employee that is. But after the third or fourth time, I'm probably going to be annoyed already. And you do not want to have an annoyed auditor sitting in your company and go through your skills and your training records, right? So this is something that's prone to mistakes already. Same goes for the skill names. Generally, if it's about the naming, it's just difficult to make sure or to eliminate the human error. And might not be even an error done on purpose or something. It might be also to say, hey, let's just make it a little bit easier, because you know what, Stefan, yeah, we know everybody. We don't need to put the last name in here because you know it's Stefan anyway, right? I can see Larissa in the chat. So we only have one Larissa, so we put it in here. So I know that, but the auditor, of course, would know this. So that is something that is difficult to do. So if we have a look, for example, now at AG5, I can see here in production team 3, I have all the employees here on the left side, I have the skills here on the top side. If I would want to go and create now a new matrix for my production team number 4, I simply click here on the right side for the new matrix, and then the system takes us by the hand already and says, hey, first choose the employees, and then I would suggest you go to the tree list, because then you can see where information is actually coming from in steps. And let's say, okay, we want to have a matrix for production team number 4. I click on next. Then what type of skills do you want to see? We only want to see the certificates, because we want to create a matrix only for the certificates of team 4 in production. I can click on next, then I can rename it if I would want to. I can even pre-filter some data if I would want to, if that's relevant for me. And then I click for save. And then you can already see, hey, there's the complete filled out matrix for me already. And why is it filled out? Because the employees are in the system anyway. If you have an integration with your HR system, for example, all the employee names would automatically run over to AG5 anyway. So the data is already there. Same goes for your certificates. You might have an integration with your LMS, with your learning management system. So all the skill names and the certificates and trainings are automatically running into AG5. If there's a new skill added to your learning management system, it will be automatically running over to AG5. Right, so this is something that is already existing in AG5, and then based on this, we can create the matrix in 3 clicks that you thought just now. Of course, I can also play around a little bit to make sure that maybe it's a little bit more clearer for me, or clearer for me to understand the system here. Employees on the left side, right? So we can play around a little bit, but that's not the focus for today to make the matrix pretty. It is easily to understand, right? So if I look, for example, now here on top, I can see that Linus, for example, he still needs to be trained in one specific skill. So how would I do this now in AG5, in Excel, sorry. Let's jump to here again. So first, I would probably, is actually Linus in here? Yeah. So let's have a look at this matrix here for production team number 3, where Linus is still a part of. He needs to be trained in that specific skill. And why does he need to be trained off is something we need to ask ourselves, right? So we need to preset requirements in the system somehow. How do you do this in Excel even? And we see in the wild or in that customers creating tabs here. You can see here at the bottom requirement tabs where you define specific requirements. For example, based on job roles. You could also create requirements based on machines, based on product teams. When you say, okay, everybody in a specific team needs to have specific certificates. You can base it on product lines, departments. Yeah, so you can be creative and whatever would make sense for you in this case where you want to base it on. Then you need to create the requirements in here. Let's say here we have, for example, a product specialist as a job role. And then I want them to be here up to level 3, up to level 2. Sorry, here's level 3, 4, 1, right? And so forth. So you go through the different skills and then you can, want to create requirements. And then what you have to do in complicated formulas, you have to link those requirements back to your original sheet to make sure that maybe you have some sort of color indication that the level is too low, that somebody needs to be still trained. Right, in this example sheet, we do not have the formulas in here. However, of course, you can do this, that the different shades of green, for example, or the red one here, that somebody needs to be trained in. So, and in this case, let's say Linus, he just got the training for the certified welding up to a level 3, let's say. So now I put the level 3 here in that matrix for them. But this, of course, is not all, because we want to make sure also that there's some sort of history in the system. So the next step for me would be to say, hey, I go here to my little history tab. I'm gonna add Linus Brower. He got the training in that specific skill. There's a history tab here. Today is the 24th of April, 25. He was trained up to level 3. Right? And then this is my second step that I had to do. And then there's, of course, it's a certified welding. So that means there needs to be some sort of certificate floating around somewhere. So how can I keep track of this? For this, you know it yourself how it goes, right? I have this folder structure here. I have here the certificate that maybe he got. And then I go into my skills management, into my training records, into my production team, and then into team 3 and up to Linus. And then I go into a certificate folder and then I put it in here. So those are a lot of steps that they have to do, and then multiply this by 100, for example. Let's say you have a workforce of 100 people or 500 people even. Those are all steps you always have to do, and that's just, yeah, it's just super annoying. I can't even say it differently because nobody wants to do this. Those 1,000 clicks you have to do per day only to add those basic information in here. So how would we do this now in AG5? So let's go to our matrix. I say Linus is trained. I can see here is currently up trained to level 2. And this, by the way, is already the first thing you cannot easily see in that specific Excel sheet in this case, because I can see he was trained up to level 3. If I want to see what his previous level was, I would either have to add a specific column. I would have to go through the list to see, hey, what was actually his previous thing. You have to put the filter in there, additional steps to put in. So in this case, I say, okay, Linus, he was trained up to level 3. I simply click on that specific icon. I can see it's required from him. And why is it required? Because he's part of that specific team. I can add the result in here. I can drag and drop the same certificate that we just put into his folder online. I can add it here as an attachment. I click on up to level 3. I can click on save. I can even add a remark if I would want to. I click on save, and then you can see, hey, Linus is trained up to level 3. And now if I go to that employee page of Linus, I have one source of truth. I can see, where is this? Certified welding that we just added. Was it this one? Let's see. I think it was this one, right? So this is the one that they put in. Yeah, here today actually, which is nice. If I click on that result, I can see that when was it added. I could also see who added that specific result to the system. So you always have the track record, you know, who made what kind of changes. I can even see if I click on past states, I can see that level was too low beforehand. So I can see that Linus was on a level 2 before, and now he's up to level 3. And then if I scroll up a little bit, I can see by the attachments, I can see here at the bottom, attachments linked to a skill result. So I can see that the certificate we uploaded, it's on one glance, I can easily see, hey, this is a certificate for that specific employee uploaded today. And if I look here on top, by the way, you can also see direct attachments to the employee themselves, which would be, for example, the curriculum of them, the medical card, everything that is required to keep track of or to have in the system that is not attached to a specific skill learned at your company, right? So, for example, maybe he needs to have a driver's license to do his job, but where do you save it easily? So you can just put it here into the system. So those is already the steps. Those are already the steps to make it so much easier if you would want to add a result to the system in AG5 compared to Excel, right? You just have one click, and then you have already the person in the result in AG5, including the certificate. Another thing that could happen, for example, we talked about it, or we saw it in our slides. If you have a succession planning, or if somebody is just leaving the company, or somebody is not available. So it's all situations that could happen. Let's take it one step at a time. If somebody, for example, is on leave, on a longer leave, maybe they're on a sabbatical or have a parental leave or whatever that could happen. In this case, I would simply go to the employee page again, and I can click here on edit, and I could add, for example, unavailability, which would mean that person is currently not available for the active workforce. If I look at a skill matrix, or if I want to search for somebody who can do a specific job, he would not show up because they're currently unavailable, right? So I can start and an end date for the unavailability. I can click on save, and that means they fall out of the current active workforce. And once the unavailability runs out, they simply reappear, and then they can be start working again. If you have somebody that leaves the company, for example, we can also do this manually. I can click here on edit, and then I can put the contract period in there when the contract is running out. So they're also, again, not part of the active workforce anymore. However, all the trainings that that specific employee had, they're still recorded in the system, because maybe in half a year you have an audit coming up, or you need to check something. Why did Linus operate a specific machine? Did he even have the certificate for that? Right? So you can look at the historic data in the system, and you will always see it. And of course, if we have an HR integration running with AG5, we can integrate with all kinds of different HR tools at our systems. Stuff like an unavailability, contract start and end date, this can all run over automatically, or even the employee itself, right? So if your employee is created in your HR tool, then the employee runs over automatically to AG5. And if that employee runs over to AG5, then of course you want to know and you want to understand what is expected of that employee. Why do they need to be trained on? And if you want to talk about requirements of an employee, then right, we remember here that little requirements tab that we have based on a job role, for example. How would you do this in AG5? For this, we're going to have a quick look at the organizational structure. And let me see. Okay, so this is the organizational structure here that we can see. based on the organization, based on roles and requirements, based on workstation and machines. Those are just 3 examples here in the system, in our demo system that we use. Of course, you can be creative and whatever makes sense in your company to ensure that everybody gets the training that they need. In this case, we put in the product specialist, right, as the required training. Here we have also the job roles. We have the different jobs here spelled out. We can also see the different employees in here. And you can see here, for example, for the production specialist, we have 33 employees or 33 people that are working as a production specialist. And the 17 means there are 17 requirements attached to that specific job role. So what does this mean? That means that everybody that is part of that specific grouping needs to be trained in all those specific skills. And you can see here, it looks a little bit different, right? So for example, if we have language skill in English, or we have here machine know-how, if it's a skill that at multiple levels, you can go in there and decide what type of level you expect from somebody as a production specialist. So we can, for example, say, hey, as a production specialist, customer relations know-how, we want you to be advanced. So this means now, but for all those people that you can see in here, now all of a sudden they need to be leveled or trained up to advanced, right? And if you would want to add a new skill, for example, a new requirement to that specific job role, you can click here on the right side, add a skill requirement. Behavior courses, that's something like first aid course here in the Netherlands. I can drag and drop. No, it's just like you know it from your own computer. You drag and drop the skill over, and you can see the background where it changes in a different shade of gray. I just drag and drop into the production specialist. You can see the purple goes up to an 18 because now we have 18 different requirements defined for that specific job role. If somebody would change, let's say from our junior specialist, let's say Len, for example, he did a great job. He's climbing up the corporate ladder. So he's not a junior specialist. He's like a full specialist now. I can again just drag and drop him down into the production specialist. And now all of a sudden the new requirements apply to him. But the good part is that all the training that he might already have had in the past, and that is still valid, right? Maybe he doesn't need to be retrained, or there's no, simply it's still valid. They also apply to here. Because if the same skills apply to multiple job roles, that means that they are transferable and that they're valid for the different job roles, which is a really, really great advantage if you want to cross-train your employees to work maybe in different teams, in different departments, different job roles, right? So you can keep track of the cross-training for your employee. And how would this look on the employee page itself, right? So if I go to my employee page, let's have a look at our friend Linus. He's currently working as a production specialist in production team number 4. If I open this one up, I can see that the production specialist has 16 attachments, requirements for him, and that the production team 4 has 18 requirements. Now, if I scroll down, I can also see all the different skills that he had. I can see the trainings. I can see what is also still open. And if they would want to, or if they need to be cross-trained in also a different team or a different job role, I can click here on the right side, edit position, and let's say, okay, Linus, he also needs to jump around between team 4 and team 3, because maybe team 3 is a little bit understaffed. Then I can simply go to my production team and say, he's also part of team 3. And I can click on save. And then I can see here, we have both different teams, and I can see for team number 3, he's actually missing one less skill that he has in team number 4, right? So this is easy for you to cross-train your workforce to make sure that everybody can do their job and that you're compliant with the requirements. So now we talked about the requirements, we talked about the employees, how they are the system and how the requirements relate to each other. But then, of course, the big question is, if there's a requirement in place, how does the employee even know that it's required of them, that they need to be trained? Then, of course, we can put a planning into place. we can put a so-called workflow into place that notifies employees. And we have different reasons or different situations where we can have a workflow that activates. In this case, you can, for example, see that the bell icon means that there's a certification about to running out. And if I open up here on the right side my display settings, you always have a legend of all the different icons that you can see in the system. But I tell you right now, that means it's about running out. If I open this one by simply clicking on it, I can actually see current status expiring soon. So our first warning that somebody needs to be retrained is on the matrix itself. Right, so if you share the matrix, for example, with the manager of the team, then they always have a visual about the training and the workforce. But then, of course, we can also put a planning into place and say, hey, we want them to be trained. It expires by the end of August. That's actually quite the long warning period, but good to know, better to know it too early than too late. He needs to be trained up to level 3. So we want them to be trained maybe, let's say, I know there's an event happening on the 29th of May. I want to sign him up. So I say, okay, on the 29th of May, I want to participate. I want Linus to participate in the training. I could even say, training XYZ in maybe a training room or something that I can put here as information. I can see here on the right side already if there are other employees also signed up for that specific training, and if there are any other skills that train for that employee. I can click on save, and then you can see that little blue circle here, which means, hey, there's a training, there's something planned for that employee. So this is already our first step we took care of. Another one here that you can see is that this is an active open skill gap for an employee where you could, of course, also do a trainings plan. But this is something that we need to take care of. So our Linus needs to be trained in that specific one. And to make sure that it's not forgotten, we have so-called workflows that can be activated, which means the system is sending out an email notification to the employee, for example, or to the manager maybe, to remind them, hey, there's a skill either missing completely, as here in this case for Linus, or maybe there's a skill that is too low, which we can also see here for Linus, or we can also send a message out, an email that says, hey, Linus, be aware, there's a new planning for you into place, just to make sure that Linus is aware that there's something happening and that he needs to take action. And of course, we can decide who wants to get or who should get that email. Is it either the employee? Is it the manager? Is it maybe even an external email address, right? So we can decide where those notifications go to. And actually, I think I saw a chat message coming up. I think we're going to have a look at those questions afterwards. Let's go quickly through them. Is there a limit of employees and skills in a skill matrix? No, there's no limit. You can have as many employees and as many skills in your matrix. Of course, the bigger and the more information there is, the more difficult it is for you to, or the harder it makes to identify what you want to look for. But theoretically, there's no limitation for that. Do you have access management in AG5 is another question. Yes, we do. Of course, we can determine who needs to see what in the system, who can see what, who can do what, right? So the most basic access right for your employee, for example, would be giving them access rights only to their own employee portfolio page. So if Linus would look into the system, he doesn't even see all those tabs here on top. He would only see his own employee page with his trainings, and then you could decide, is he even allowed to put in a result himself? Do you want to be only viewing rights for the employee? Do you want to have an approval process, for example, that says, okay, Linus can add a result, but the manager needs to approve it before it goes live in the system? Right, so those are different possibilities we can do. What other compliances do you people achieve? As I will be putting information on the... Oh, I think the second question is probably about data security and well, I mean, we're sitting in Europe, right? So of course we have to follow the GDPR. We are compliant with the common law, not only in Europe, but we have companies that work with us actually worldwide. So we always make sure that we're following the guidelines to make sure that everything is secure and that everything is limited the way it should be based by the law. Is this linking with the LMS and HR platforms? There's a question about the linking with the LMS and the HR platforms. Yeah, so we can link with LMS and HR. What exactly is expected from the integration, of course, would need to be discussed. There are multiple things we can do. We can, for example, have the HR data running over to AG5. Same with the LMS. We can only have the LMS names running over into AG5, but we can also then, for example, if we add a result in AG5, that it sends back to LMS that it's achieved there, right? So this is, but that's something more in detail that we will probably need to discuss then in a different session where we can talk about the capabilities of the integrations. But there are different ways you can achieve probably your goal. When does it show when it's expiring soon? 2 months, 3 months? Yeah, that is a really good question. So the question is, why is this yellow, which means it expires soon, and when does it actually show up? And this is something you can completely customize yourself. So if I have a look at that skill here, I can see that the warning period put based on that skill itself is 6 months. So which means now that 6 months before the skill is running out, we would get the bell icon that turns yellow. We would send out the notification email. However, of course, you can also, the notification, you can say override the 6 months and say only send it a month in advance. So there's something you can completely customize actually. Can you identify easily internal trainers? Yes. What you would want to do then, of course, you could create an employee as an internal trainer, and you could create a specific tag, for example, as a trainer. You can also create a position that his job role is not only logistics expert level 1, but also the external trainer, right? So this is, we have actually multiple ways how you could keep track of that to make sure who is a specific trainer. And then you can also build requirements based on this a little bit. So you could, for example, say, hey, if you are tagged as a trainer and you are tagged as a logistics expert or in the department logistics, then you need to be capable of something specific because you're training that material, right? So those are things you can play around in AG5 and you can set it up, or we would set it up in our onboarding, right? Can I integrate with my HRMS data? Do you provide any API? So that is an interesting question. My HRMS, I'm not so sure what my HRMS is. However, we do have an API connection. That is actually something that is accessible for everybody. If you look at the help section, there's an AG5 API connection documentation where you can read through it. Yeah, so I think probably we could connect to your HR system. But then again, if you have any more in detail questions regarding integration possibilities, that is something we can discuss afterwards. And could even then CC someone from our IT department to make sure that all the technical questions are answered. So what else do we want to do? So we talked about the cross-training, we talked about the planning that we can put into place, right? We can see the different warnings, why somebody needs to be trained, what are the steps that we need to take to make sure that everybody is compliant and that we have the data that we need. Let me see, I made some notes for myself. So the next really big part, of course, and I have to look at our time before it's running out. The next big part, of course, is skill gap analysis, right? We want to make sure that we understand how is my workforce going, who needs to be trained and what specific, what is happening to my workforce, how can I easily plan ahead to get the most out of my training. Because maybe I know that there's a specific trainer coming in 2 months into our company, and we want to make sure that we roll in to his class all the employees that need to be trained in something specific. So, and for this, we can have a look here on the top right corner. I wiggle my mouse a little bit so it's a little bit more visual what I do here. So we have the little bell icon here, and this is our so-called alert list. And the alert list is a flat list of everything that's happening in your system. And with everything, I mean everything, right? So you can see problems, warnings. You can also see what's fine, who's trained completely. And then I can open it up. I can say what skills are expired, what skills are failed. Maybe somebody participated in a training and just didn't make it, right? So we can filter this one out. Level too low. Maybe somebody is already trained but needs a higher level of a training, right? So those are all the problems. Same about the warnings if something is expired, and of course the fine ones if something is okay. And even here, right, we can also filter for skills that are trained but currently not required anymore. And what does this mean if it's not required of me? Let's say me as a product specialist, level 1 needs to be trained in skill A, but as a product specialist level 2, that's not my responsibility anymore. So I don't need to be trained in skill A anymore. So it's not a requirement for me. However, I was trained in it, so my track record will still be showing that I'm actually trained and that I would be capable of doing this, because cross-training, succession planning, somebody is maybe sick, you want to make sure that all your track record is in the system, so you can easily see and find who could do what job on within 1 or 2 clicks. So here in our alert list, we can see all of our employees, all the skills. I can filter, for example, on skills. So let's say I want to have somebody be trained on certified, what is this? The welding one. Let's see, we want to see, hey, who's be trained on the certified welding skill. So I can see based on today, I have 29 problems, and the problems are level too low, and that it's simply required and not fulfilled. So this actually are both skill gaps here, because the skill is simply not there. I have a few of the warnings because I see it's expiring soon. And then of course I also can see, hey, we have a bunch of employees that are trained in it, so that's fine. So here I can easily see, hey, who is currently missing the training, who needs to be planned in something, who needs to be taken care of. But then maybe you also have an audit coming up soon. So what you want to do in this case, you want to look ahead. Maybe you know that there's an audit happening in 6 months. So I can apply the filter in 6 months and then all of a sudden see, hey, once the audit is coming around in 6 months, actually my problems increase because we have 36 people more, 36 people overall who have a problem in here. And then we also have something that goes up is the fine. And why is this the case? Probably because we have trainings put into place that by that time should be achieved. Yeah, so this is a really, really great tool for you to plan ahead and to analyze the skill gaps you have in the system to understand, hey, what's happening in the future? Of course, you can not only filter by skills, you can also filter by employees. You could also filter by groupings of your organizational structure, right? You could say, hey, of a specific machine or a specific team, let's say production team number 4, for example, how do they look in 6 months? Right, so I can see my whole team here already in a flat list to see how those skills are changing, how the certifications change in that specific time frame. Next one that we want to see here on the right side is the so-called expert finder, succession planning. Somebody is maybe on vacation, maybe somebody is sick or simply leaves the company. I can search for something. So let's say Linus decided ultimately, hey, you know what, I want to leave the company, so I'm gone. I can click on Linus, and then it shows me, hey, Linus currently holds 34 different requirements in here. Who in our current workforce would be able to replace Linus? And then I can see, for example, Ashley, she would be able to 59% to already fulfill Linus's job. So for me to retrain or not retrain, for me to invest in her training would be a good decision because I know they are already more than halfway there, right? So it's resource management for yourself to make sure that the training that you put into your workforce and employees is at the right place, and the people are capable of doing the job, right? And if it's maybe not Linus that leaves, maybe you want to search for a specific job role. Let's say Linus is leaving and here's a production expert level 2, or let's say logistics expert level 2 is leaving. And then you can see, hey, okay, who is here who could fulfill that job as a production level 2? So you can play around based on the requirements in the system. You can search for skills, you can search for a combination of different skills to see who is fulfilling that level. Okay, let's see. Libraries. Let's have a look at all our certification skills here that we have, and then we can say, you know what, maybe for certificate 15, the number level 1 is okay, level 1, right? So you can customize your search query to really meet the goals that you need. And then you can already see, hey, who's matching? It's still Ashley. So Ashley is actually a pretty good candidate for whatever we're planning, right? So you can search for skills, employees, for grouping, for job roles. And yeah, so this is Expert Finder. And then another thing for you to also visualize the skills gaps that you have. Let's jump into our production team number 4. Let's say the C-suite, somebody in the C-suite wants to see how how the workforce is faring regarding their skills. Of course, if you would give them access to that matrix, they could scroll through that and say, yeah, okay, nice, but what does it even mean for me now? Because it's a lot for you as a skills management experts. You can easily say, hey, okay, I have plenty of people who actually trained properly. I can see some is running out soon. So this gives you the information. But the higher up you go in the management, the more condensed you want to have the information that you need to see, right? So, and to make the life here a little bit easier, we have that insights button here on the right side. Now it takes a moment to load the newest data. And you can already see it's filtered on gene number 4. And we have here a really nice dashboard where you can see, for example, your compliance rate. You can see how did it change over time. How many issues do we have? Is it compliant, right? So it's an easy tool for anybody to understand what is the status quo for our current workforce. I can scroll down even a little bit. I can see, okay, which of those skills are the most difficult ones that are, this one, for example. Certified hazardous materials manager, there's a 0 compliance rate. So for you as a skills management expert would then mean, hey, I really need to make sure that we get a trainer for that specific skill in-house so they can train that skill. Same here, which one are the best ones? I have 100% compliances for the certified building inspector, which I guess it's a really good thing because she's inspecting things. Right, so you have different information here in the system that you can pull from based on that specific matrix. You can also break it down for the employees. So which of the employees are the best, and I don't want to say which employees are the worst, but there's always the top and the bottom of the employees, of course. But if you look at this overall, you have a few that are a little bit over 10. You have some that are a little bit under 10. So the average is kind of okay, but of course you want to push them all the way even more. And if you scroll back up, you can see this is now based on that gene number 4. I could also, for example, look for a different matrix. So this is based on the matrix that you can see. And if you say, hey, I don't want to see it based on a matrix, because we had the question earlier, how many people and how many skills can you actually have in a matrix? You could also say, hey, I want to see it for everybody in AG5. And then you can simply X away the matrix. This would also lead you to the general insights button here on top. You can see how's everybody doing and how's my general workforce doing? How compliant are we? What is the compliance rate here? Which of the employees are the best and not the best? So yeah, this is all the information we can see here on one glance, and that's easily accessible. You can refresh it, of course, always to be up to date. And even here, you can also change the view where you want to see, right? So this is an ideal tool for you to actually analyze your skill gaps and to share it with your manager or with a presentation. Or let's say you have a quarterly or yearly meeting where you need to present your team or your workforce. You don't have to worry about pulling all that data and creating some graphs. It's all there. With 2 clicks, you can access your data in the system. Let's see, do we have another question in here? Can I get a free access to test all the features of the platform? That is actually a really good question. I want to say yes, because there's a way for you to sign up online to get access to the tools. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure if all the features are available. Maybe Larissa can put something into the chat if she knows, but there's always a possibility, of course, to have a custom demo with one of us. We can put your data into the system. You can access to a test version and basic features. But yeah, you can always book a demo with one of us, of course, for free, right? So you can book a demo, where we walk you through the system, where we showcase you, and then we can take it from there. Let's see. I made some notes for myself. Do I have anything that I forgot? I think we're pretty much through. Let's jump back into our one step back. So we had to look at our employees in the system. We saw how we can add the skills in AG5 and how we can add the requirements in AG5. We added the certification and documentation to an employee on their page in the attachments tab, right? We saw how we can create the requirements for skills in our organizational structure, and we saw just now how we easily can analyze our skill gaps and have an insight in our compliance rate. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. The Q&A we already did here on the side. And of course, please, if you have interest, you can always book an introduction demo with us. And you will also have now the chance to rate the survey, to rate the webinar. There's a survey you can fill out how interesting it was for you. And I think that's it for today. Thank you all for participating today. You will get access to recordings. You will get access to the slides that you saw here. If you have any questions whatsoever, of course, please reach out to one of us. We're more than happy to answer all your questions. And for me personally, of course, I would be really, really excited and happy if I can see one or two of your names in a future onboarding that we can get you into AG5. And with this being said, have a nice rest of the day. Have a nice evening for the people where it's already a little bit later today. And yeah, maybe see you in our next webinar, and all the best for you.